Welcome to the Riverside Project podcast. We are mobilizing Houston to empower families and transform generations. We hope these conversations will give you a greater understanding of the issues facing our community and inspire you to find your place along the river. Today we have Luevenia Chapman with us. Luevenia is the co-founder and program director for Hearts with Hope Foundation. Hearts with Hope is a local GRO, or group residential operation. It provides treatment services for girls ages 7 to 23. Before founding Hearts with Hope, Luevenia worked in the oil and gas industry for 21 years. And she not only has a passion to provide really high quality residential care for the girls that they serve, but she's also passionate about raising up and supporting leaders all over the city of Houston. And so we're really grateful just for her leadership in this space and for her being with us today. So
thank you, Amber, for having me.
You. Of course. So as always, let's start off just by learning a little bit about Hearts with Hope. What is a GRO? All those acronyms that we have in the child welfare system. Can you explain a little bit about what that is? It's a group residential operation.
Well,
what is that?
General residential operation.
General. Okay, I said that wrong.
General residential operations provide services for youth 7 or more in the foster care system. And those services can range from treatment services to pragmatic services, and it determines what the youth's needs are based on the services that you provide.
Okay, so what kinds of treatment are you talking about?
Therapy.
Okay.
Life skills.
Okay.
We do educational programs and anything that really helps the child to help them get past their past and help them live a normal life as much as possible.
Okay. So what kinds of, how do girls find you? How do they get referred to your program?
They get referred by the Department of Family Protective Services through the CPS.
Okay. Gotcha. And then tell me a little bit about your staff and kind of what happens on a day-to-day just within the
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
All the things.
A typical day at Hearts with Hope would be the girls wake up early in the morning to get ready for school. Some of them may or may not get out of the bed. Some of them have to be prompted more than others. Usually we may have 1 or 2 girls that are home from school because they're suspended because of fighting or just having a bad day, which happens. And the staff will work with them, help them to get the education that they need that they would have missed if they had not been at school. When the girls come home from school in the afternoon, there's a full schedule that provides, they may have therapy one day. We talk about therapy, we talk about individual therapy, group therapy. They may have a meeting with the family support specialist. That entails them actually doing Zoom calls with their family if there's a reconnection there that we're trying to make. There may be volunteers from the community that come over. We work with the Hay Center to provide academics for the youth that are having challenges in the school system. They go outside and do recreation, have dinner. They're in bed by 8. So it's a pretty full day, especially when they get home from school. Everything starts right away.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot all at once that they get hit with. Can you tell us a little bit about what the trajectory is? So a girl will be referred to you, and do they stay a long time? Is it maybe differs from girl to girl? How does that work? What's the kind of trajectory for them?
Well, we pride ourselves in focusing on the individual needs of the youth, and so you may have some that stay with us 6 to 9 months. We've had them as long as 4 years, where we had this one youth who was actually with us, and she had been in several placements prior to coming to Hearts with Hope, and the judge saw the progress that she was making, and he court ordered that she stay with us. So she stayed with us until she was 17. And she ended up going to a foster home, and we still keep in touch with her today. So that's one of those great stories.
Yeah, it almost becomes like a family for some of them, hopefully all of them in some ways.
Yes, it does. And for the staff as well.
Yeah, that's good. I assume that having that many girls all together who are all teenagers, and how many would you say that girls are with you at a time on any given day?
We have a bed service for 29 youth.
Okay.
And I think the most we've had is right now we have 21.
Okay.
And we have actually two programs. We have the GRO program, and then in addition to that, we have the transitional living program. Okay. So the home that houses the GRO program houses up to 19 beds.
Okay.
And then we have the transitional living program that has up to 10 youth. Okay. Each one is different in the sense that the GRO focuses more on the treatment services, the childhood trauma that the child has been through, and the transitional living program is helping those youth because they can move from one program to the next. Very few actually come in from the outside into the TLP program because there are certain criteria that they have to meet.
Right.
But the TLP focuses on life skills, helping to prepare the youth when they age out of the system to where they can actually be more independent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a shift. I mentioned earlier that you used to be in oil and gas for many years, living in the business world, and then it's pretty hard left going into this work. What motivated you to do that?
When I left the oil and gas business, actually before I left the oil and gas business, I knew that my purpose was to do something with kids. When I was working for the oil and gas industry, I actually did a lot of volunteering and some coaching and some tutoring with youth. And I just fell in love with it and knew that this is where I wanted to be. So when I left the oil and gas business, my husband and I, Pat, we visited a couple of RTCs. And when I was working for the oil and gas company, I thought maybe working with youth in a daycare, the babies that you can cuddle and they won't talk back to you, but God had a different purpose for us. And so we worked and visited a couple of RTCs and fell in love with the kids, and God he just drew us to that industry, that field. And so I volunteered at an RTC, and my husband supported every step of the way, and he retired from AT&T. And so we were able to pull it together with the support of other providers.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it is, yeah, it's so inspiring to think that you can just make that shift and follow that calling. And in some ways, I'm sure that, you mentioned a daycare is not exactly what you intended to do with the little ones, but I'm sure the same type of care is needed. Talk about going all the way back and providing nurturing care and what those girls need.
It is. Yeah. Different age group, but they still need the same things. They need the love, they need the patience, the understanding, and they so much need our attention.
Yeah, it's that connection, it's that relationship. Absolutely. You mentioned a little bit about the challenges that some of the kids face. They sometimes don't want to go to school. They have behaviors. They have trauma, right? At the root of some of those behaviors is the experiences that they've had that have led to struggling in that way and struggling with interconnectedness and that feeling of belonging. How have you seen that, manifest? And then what is Hearts with Hope doing? What type of training? How are you equipping yourselves to care for those kids with those types of trauma?
The youth have had a lot of trauma in their past, and they've been taken away from their families, and that's how they end up in the foster care system in the first place. Yeah. So your heart goes out to them when you're reading their packets to see, how can you care for this youth? Are they a fit for our program? My staff and I, we use the evidence-based care and services to provide a safe, supportive, structured environment in a home-like area that actually helps the youth to give them support and help them through the trauma that they've lived through.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we have the proper training, making sure that we are monitoring the staff and the youth to see what training is needed, and consistently providing that training and that structure for the youth. A lot of the youth that we receive through the foster care system, they need that one-on-one structure. They have that high intensity of behaviors that can include anything from self-abuse to homicidal behaviors. A lot of just not knowing because of their past how to be a child at times.
Right. Many of them just trying to survive, right?
Definitely.
Just trying to survive, and having to meet them there and all different, lots of different
yes.
girls with different challenges. I cannot imagine the way that you'd have to equip your team just to be flexible, to be able to be compassionate, and also to provide structure. That is, as a parent, just with our own children, that balance for one or two is just a challenge. You have to provide that structure and also just deep compassion for healing. Going a little bit further into what I talked about before, not only are you caring for the girls in your home and your own team and trying to make sure that kids are safe and cared for and getting the healing that they need, you also have stepped into caring for other providers. We kind of co-host a RTC collaborative where you've been doing this for many years, bringing other providers together and saying, it's not enough for us to do this as well as we can. We actually need everyone to do this as well as we can. And so you've actually used your own experience to not only advocate legislatively and talk to the people in charge, but getting those people together in the same room and saying, we're here for you too, so that we can do this together. Yeah. Why did you start doing that? What motivated you to start that?
When we started Hearts with Hope in 2007, we felt like we were alone. And we had a lot of challenges up until around 2015, where we had two wonderful ladies from a local church to knock on our door and provide us and offer us assistance from their church and from the community. And when we realized for a while we couldn't do it by ourselves, it was easy for us to accept that help.
Yeah.
A lot of providers don't feel that way. They still feel like they're on an island by themselves, and they know that they want to help children, they want to help support their needs, but they just don't know how. So they get into the business with no support, no guidance on what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
So along the side of a couple of other individuals, we created the RTC GRO Providers Collaboration. We meet quarterly. We invite guest panels to talk about the concerns, the changes in the system. We provide training and just sharing of information and networking with other providers that are out there that have questions or need some type of assistance or just even a direction on where to go to get the help. And so that was important to me because the providers that helped Hearts with Hope open, I wanted to give back to others.
Yeah. In terms of the river that we always talk about, a lot of, foster families, organizations like yours, you're the people in the water actively trying to care and get kids to the side. You're trying to get them stabilized. You're trying to help them into adulthood. And you mentioned just churches and other organizations and partnerships in the community that can help. It's interesting how we talk about how you can find a place upstream, midstream, downstream, but you can find a place not just in the water, but at different levels of proximity to the people in the river. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
So you may be the ones jumping in and caring for those girls, but there can be somebody on the side who's saying, hey, we're gonna make sure that the home that you have is in good order, and we're gonna help with landscaping, and we're gonna help with making sure the home, if you have a repair that's needed, we're gonna make sure that you have that. And just the seeing you and encouraging you and you not feeling alone, that opens up so many doors for the community, right, to step into your world.
Amber, you're absolutely right. I look back on before these ladies came to our door and the struggles that we had. And then I look at from since 2015, how we have grown with community partners and organizations like Building New Foundations and Harvey Builders and different churches and the Collective Action for Youth and just to name a few, I mean, that have been with us and walked with us through those challenges now. And they're not just saying here a one-time service, they're actually there working alongside us with the girls, providing mentorships and giving them a lot of support and just someone to be able to call when they're having a bad day. I don't think people really understand how important that is to our youth.
Having those connections as they move into adulthood. We've done a book study together where we're teaching providers that partnerships in the community are so vital because that's where these kids are going to hopefully end up one day in the community, and we want them to be able to thrive. So those opportunities to step in and see a kid, see a youth and the things that they're good at, the things that they're interested in, and then finding ways to connect them to places where they can use those gifts. It's such a movement into the community that if the community's not there and ready to receive those kids, it just makes it a lot harder for them to build that relationship.
It does.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit too on just the challenges of providers. So we're kind of shifting more to the system itself. We've gone to Austin. We've linked arm in arm there, saying, "Hey, there's things here." We hear all the time that the system is broken, and we know that in many ways it is. But we are really looking to find ways to transform this kind of system that we're all working in, because at the end of the day, it's the kids and the families that we want them to heal, right? And so what would you say are kind of the main things that you really want to see happen for providers and for the care that kids and families receive through living in these congregate care residential operations?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't put the truth out there of the struggles and the challenges that providers go through. Working with individuals through the GRO RTC Providers Collaboration, you hear a lot of stories, and even some of my own personal stories. I can relate to what they're saying. 2 years ago, if you'd asked me this question about the system, I would have said it's just as broken as the youth we serve. Since the lawsuit and the attention that the child without placement is receiving, it has shed a light on holding people more accountable for their actions. And while we know that there are individuals that are in this wholeheartedly, the same is true to individuals who come in half doing or half knowing how to support the youth and their needs. So staffing is a big issue, especially since COVID. We had challenges prior to COVID, but even more so now after COVID. People just don't want to work. It's important for us to have the staff that are stable and that are there and that have been with us for years. We have our longest longevity is about 13, 14 years. And it varies from there. And we have a stable staff that are in it for the right reasons, and that is because they want to support the youth. Challenges of being micromanaged and being able to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do, and struggles that include maybe sometimes when there are double standards for one organization and not the other, depending on who is your compliance officer. Being able to learn from minimum standards but not have double jeopardy. The way the system is set up right now, you have DFPS and HHSC, and some of their compliance requirements overlapped. So if you make one error, it can cause you several minimum standard violations.
Gotcha.
And right now, the minimum standards, there's over 400 pages of standards that you have to meet, and some of them don't even apply or have anything to do with the safety of the youth. And so that needs to be relooked at, which I think there's a bill,
Yeah.
House Bill 1517 that's
Yep.
out that I hope passes and I support wholeheartedly, where they're going to take a look at the overlap and focus on certain levels of compliances. I think the staffing and the lack of communication and collaboration between the system and the providers is a big issue. A lot of providers feel that they're just caregivers and they're not being heard.
Yeah.
And we work with these youth day in and day out. So if you really want to get to the root of the cause and help support these youth and have them be more successful when they age out of the system, talk to the providers, talk to the youth.
Yeah. Youth have a
They have a lot
need
to
a
say.
bigger say, yeah, in what their own lives.
And so when you talk about the chain of command, we're at the bottom, at the very bottom. And the system allows youth to be able to manipulate and get away with a lot of things. We understand that because of their trauma, but there needs to be more accountability from the youth. When I look at general residential operations, RTCs, shelters, you're looking at a different youth than you are a kid in the foster care or a foster home.
Yeah.
Okay. Kids in a foster home, they have more support. It's an ideal.
They're in a family.
Yeah.
They're in a family
It's an
situation.
ideal relationship. But when those youth have been through so much trauma and they have a lot of anger and aggression, they have to let that out because they don't know how to communicate.
Yeah.
When you've got a younger age group, it's easy to do that in a family setting. But when you have youth that are maybe around the age of 12 and up, they're older, they've been in the system longer, they know how to manipulate things, they know what to say to get to the psych hospital.
To survive.
And to survive. And so I think just being able to support those youth and give them the structure that they need and the support goes a long way.
Yeah. It's not easy, when you're looking at how do we keep these kids safe. But again, how do we make sure that we're compassionate towards them as well? There's so much there, right? There's so much that that is needed. And one of the things you keep pointing to is that collaborative. Let's listen to one another. Let's hear about each other's struggles and let's try to get on the same page. And we've talked a lot about transition planning just from the fact that many of these youth have moved so many times and then they start over with every transition. And so how do we actually come to the table, caseworker, supervisor, therapist, provider, or foster family, so that we're doing right by this kid as they move from one place to another. We know from TBRI, from trauma training, that transitions are a key area where dysregulation mostly happens because it's terrifying for kids to move. Even if they say they want to, it's typically where we see most of those behaviors. And yet so often it's that transition that there's no communication, right? The kid doesn't know where they're going, where they're at. And so even just finding places like that we can come together and do a better job with that smooth transition. There's so much there too that we could point towards. And I kind of want to ask the question too, if we were to sit here in 5 years, what would you hope is different? What would you hope we would either no longer be talking about, or if you could just imagine sitting here again 5 years from now, what would the state of the system be?
I think that if the system was less punitive to providers and gave support and collaboration and actually listened to what we had to say, we would be able to support and prevent trauma from rehappening again, and making sure that the youth are safe, working together. And that is so important and so key to what we do. I think that there's more of that in the last 2 years than there has been in a while.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I've seen our stakeholders are more aware. They're listening more. And we're still not there yet. We still need to work with those youth that are in hard to place spaces in their life. they have those high-risk behaviors that are alarmingly increasing.
Yep.
And I think that those are the challenges that the providers face every day. I would like to see in 5 years we provide more services that help the families along with the youth, that maybe we are putting together a program where the youth are able to stay in their homes in a safe place where the families are being given skills like TBRI, or they're working and they're receiving services that will help them.
Well, what if you were to look back at, do you see any of the glimpses of hope or any stories where you can look back and say, this is where we got it right? This is a situation or a story of one of the youth who you mentioned before, a girl who you're still in contact with. Are there things that you can look to that you've already experienced within Hearts with Hope that you can say, this is where it worked well? This was a story of success and hope. Can you share any of those with us?
Absolutely. There was one youth, and she was brought into the system at age 5 along with her siblings. And they were bounced from family to foster homes, into congregate care, and back and forth. And she came to us when she was, I think, about 15 years old. And when she came to us, she was at the point of no hope. She really didn't care about what happened to her or what her future looked like. We were able to dig deep into her issues and provide the services that she needed, the care, the love, the attention, the family type atmosphere. And she was sent, her level of care dropped, and she went to a foster home. She is still with that foster home today. She has some college under her belt, but she is now working at Hearts with Hope.
Wow.
Taking care of the same youth that are in the same situations that she was in before. The other thing is, we've had youth to leave our program, and they call us and ask us questions about, where do I go to get services? I'm pregnant now. How can I find care for my baby? How do I find an apartment? And talking to the management at Hearts with Hope and the board of directors, we knew there was something that we had to do that was different than what had been done before, thinking outside the box. So we're in our capital campaign to build a learning center that is going to provide these services to youth while they're in our care, and not just the youth in our care, but other foster care youth in the area, so that we can provide technical and academic services like cosmetology, computer classes, life skills, driver's ed, which is a big issue, to help these youth be able to be prepared and have a foundation before they age out of the system, and to not only provide services for the youth, but for their family.
Yeah, and being able to do that in the context of the relationships that they already have, right? Not just the skills building outside of that relationship, but to be able to do that within the context of kind of their family.
Their safe place.
Their safe place, right? That's a great way to put it. Well, just know that we are so grateful for you. We're grateful that Hearts with Hope exists in our community. We're grateful for the opportunity to come alongside, and I've told you this before, but we're in any way that we can make those partnerships more accessible. So we're grateful to be able to come alongside and support you, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Of course. To those listening, we hope these conversations have inspired you to find your place along the river, and we welcome you to join us in bringing hope and renewal to the city of Houston. If you'd like more information on how to get involved, please visit riversideproject.org and submit a contact form. We'll see you next time.